Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. Mr. Speaker, sir, I intend to be not too long. Mr. Speaker, sir, I would like to first of all beginning by thanking the many ordinary Fijians who actually contributed to the formulation of this budget. Our business leaders, the many individual Fijians who actually sent in their submissions, people on the street, people through Facebook, our dedicated technocrats and bureaucrats, our doctors, nurses, who also gave their input in respect of the way forward regarding the health systems, our Honourable Prime Minister, his agreement to put in place a visionary leadership, a visionary budget through that visionary leadership, our cabinet colleagues, and everybody else that have contributed in a very positive manner to the formulation of this particular budget, Mr. Speaker, sir. I want to also reiterate, because these are extraordinary times, this has been highlighted, which obviously seems to be lost on the opposition, the enormous effort by our people at the front line, the health workers, the doctors, the nurses, the RFMF personnel, the police, who are now also part and parcel of this new measures we put in place to try and reignite the economy through the Bula bubble, the blue lanes in particular, which is already working now, Mr. Speaker, sir. I'd like to acknowledge their contribution in their assistance and continued assistance. Mr. Speaker, sir, of course, I'd like to also thank those people who have helped in the maintenance of the curfew, the downloading of the Care Fiji app, which I intend to get back to, Mr. Speaker, sir. Because these are actually extraordinary times. The world, throughout, every single country in the world has been affected by COVID-19. Every single country in the world, Mr. Speaker, sir, has had an economic downturn. Every single country in the world, Mr. Speaker, sir, has had people losing jobs, have had people being sick at the very least, and some people indeed dying. So these are enormous and challenging times, enormously challenging times, Mr. Speaker, sir. So it required, Mr. Speaker, sir, a political mindset that took a very long-term view, a long-term goal being put in place, and indeed a position that required a national effort. And in fact, Mr. Speaker, sir, after the budget was delivered, I was quite, in a way, buoyed by the comment by Honourable Sitiveni Rambuka, the Leader of Opposition, where he said, and I quote, "We have to be positive when we talk about the measures that have been announced today," meaning the 17th of July budget announcement. "It's a courageous budget, and it's up to us to critique it properly, and hopefully the nation can get behind it and go achieve the goals they believe they can achieve to get the economy back." I was quite buoyed by that, because I thought here we have a new mindset, a new political approach to a once-in-a-100-year lifetime situation, and we will now get on with the business of actually moving the country forward. And indeed, what they always say, in a bipartisan manner. Of course, Mr. Speaker, sir, it changed. It completely changed. And I don't know whether it had to do with the machinations within the party or whatever it was. But from what I've heard, unfortunately I was ill in the past couple of days, I still am to an extent, but from whatever little I saw on television and from what was reported in the media, from what our colleagues told us, the Prime Minister passed on messages, it would appear the past 2 days became simply moments of ridicule for them, moments to lie, moments to try and undermine, moments to not try and recognize the hard work that's been put in, the philosophical outlook of the way forward. They simply became political point-scoring moments. But, Mr. Speaker, sir, I was sort of sitting there and thinking, what is the impact of this? What kind of deleterious effect it is having on the mindset of our people? What kind of rationalization do they have in their minds? You have newspapers, Honourable Prasad's paper, going around having headlines, without even a single reference or question to us whether what he was claiming was correct or not. Mr. Speaker, sir, This is the situation we are in. So what type of, mindset are we trying to inculcate in the public? It is so superficial. It is so shallow. In fact, it is so deceitful. Quoting from the Bible, 666, bringing props like tin fish, all of these sorts of things, Mr. Speaker, sir. It is, Mr. Speaker, sir, what I call, it is filled with misplaced contempt. It is filled, I have all the time, keep on talking. It is filled with misplaced contempt for what is actually good and what is genuine. That's what it is, Mr. Speaker, sir. And Mr. Speaker, sir, it completely ignores what is happening throughout the world. I remember once, Mr. Speaker, sir, in Parliament when we were debating, Honorable Prasad on this floor had said, in politics, everything is fair. And I remember, at that point in time, you can check the Hansard, saying, not everything is fair. As they say, that, in love and war, everything is fair. I believe not so. You must have principles. You must have values. There are certain boundaries. There are certain lines you do not cross. You must, Mr. Speaker, sir, not come to this Parliament. You must come to this Parliament, Mr. Speaker, sir, and feign. Don't feign empathy for the poor. Don't feign your patriotism, intellectual input, credibility by producing some email that if he did not read the full content of, they've already put it on their Facebook page. He did not actually put up all the other emails. Did they read the full content? And this is a professor professing these kind of things. Mr. Speaker, sir, in one breath, Mr. Speaker, sir, Honorable Sitiveni Rambuka criticizes the RBF, but in the next sentence, very hurriedly uses their figures to actually back up his own argument. What kind of contradiction is this? It's a paradoxical approach, intellectually dishonest. This is the level of debate that we actually had in Parliament, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, so it kind of, and also just listening to all the newspaper. If you can please stop having a private conversation. If you look at, Mr. Speaker, so if you look at the way that the Fiji Times has been going on about this without any reference to us or getting answers from us, it reminds me, those of you who know Bollywood, it reminds me of a 1980s movie. There used to be a character called Kader Khan. He was actually a comedian, but he was also an atrocious guy, the very negative roles he played. And there was one particular movie in which he was the opposition leader. And obviously he was opposed to the Prime Minister, the Chief Minister of that state. That particular state, Mr. Speaker, sir, actually had a huge flood. There was people were dying, the bridges had washed away, etc. So the opposition leader calls his favorite newspaper reporter in and says, look, if the Prime Minister goes to the flood-prone areas by helicopter, your headline should be, people are suffering, yet Prime Minister takes helicopter. If he does not take the helicopter, but takes the car or the train, then you must say, people are waiting, and yet he chose to go, people are waiting, people are waiting, yet he chose, You see, you're getting exasperated. Control yourself. Check your heart rate. Check your heart rate. I'll say the story again. You are not the speaker. Mr. Speaker, sir. Mr. Speaker, sir. I would please request if they stop telling me to sit down. The standing orders have been put in place. Mr. Speaker, sir, I will repeat the story. The opposition leader said, if the Prime Minister travels to the flood-prone area by helicopter, your headline must be, Prime Minister travels by helicopter and people are suffering on the ground. Expensive ride. If he chooses not to go by helicopter but goes by car, then you write, people are suffering and waiting for him, why didn't he take the helicopter? Precisely what Honorable Prasad and Fiji Times have conspired to do. Precisely what they have done, Mr. Speaker, sir. Precisely what he has done. And Mr. Speaker, sir, And you know how the perchance you have for Bollywood, Mr. Speaker, sir. Mr. Speaker, sir, I wanted to say this before I get on to the nuts and bolts of the budget debate itself, Mr. Speaker, sir. The Honourable Leader of Opposition talked a lot about, why didn't we take views of Mick Beddoes, Savinatha Narumbe. One of the things that I had to take my head off to Savinatha Narumbe for, he actually prepared an alternative budget. What have you guys done? What have you done? You had the opportunity, you have more people, you have more resources, you did not do an alternative budget because you are scared. You are scared, you don't know what to say. You don't know what to cut, what to increase. At least he had the gumption to do it. Obviously he revealed his own frailties by doing an alternative budget. But the fact of the matter is, you have never done one. You have never done a budget, Mr. Speaker, sir. Mr. Speaker, sir. Order. Never done one. Mr. Speaker, sir, the point of the matter is that there is intellectual dishonesty. Mick Beddoes suggested, let me give you a few examples. Mick Beddoes suggested, Honourable Rambuka, I don't know whoever wrote your speech, whether they told you about this or not, but Mick Beddoes suggested that civil servants should only work 3 days a week. And therefore, they should be paid only 3 days a week. So what's going to happen to the nurses, the doctors, etc.? Mr. Speaker, sir, and therefore it would have cut civil service pay by 40%. I want all the civil servants to listen to this. Mr. Speaker, sir, Savinatha Narumbe said, he said we should increase VAT to 12%. We should impose an additional 20% company tax surcharge, increase personal income tax, increase duty on motor vehicles and cut civil service salaries. And yet they're holding their submissions up as some kind of alternative to this budget? Some kind of alternative to this budget? Mr. Speaker, sir, no country is raising taxes. No country. When you don't have the ability to pay tax, why raise tax? What are you trying to do? Are you trying to undermine confidence? When people are losing jobs, you want to cut, or you want to increase salaries? Increase taxes, sorry, when companies are now losing business, you want to increase their corporate tax, and this is the alternative? These are questions, Mr. Speaker, sir, that need to be asked. We have not cut civil service salaries. We are the largest employer in Fiji. If we cut civil service salaries, we'd be taking out, sucking out, even if you did 10%, at least $120 to $130 million from the economy. They won't be able to spend that money, therefore you won't have consumption. When you don't have consumption, you don't pay VAT. They look after other people. Yes, we have made some adjustments in terms of overtime. They understand that. And in fact, those people of you who are driven so much by social media, if you look at the social media, people watching the budget address, the moment we announce there won't be any civil service pay cuts, literally, people all dropped off because the civil service are waiting to see if there will be a pay cut or not. They thought there would be one, but there wasn't one. And since then, we received many congratulations of people saying, thank you. But Mr. Speaker, it's a bigger picture. Just because the economy is slowed down in the private sector does not mean civil servants don't have to deliver services. The nurses have to work, the doctors have to work, the medical assistants have to work, the police, the military, they have to work. They have to provide services. With these new announcements, the cuts that we have made, they need to become less bureaucratic, become more efficient. So we need them. And we are paying them. They'll be the one, the key stakeholders, to drive the impetus we've given to the private sector. And this is the opposition coming here and saying we should have listened to people who should pay the civil service pay cut. Honourable Prasad, again, offered this issue. He wrote article on his webpage in the Fiji Times, yet he denied it. Yet you denied it. You know, Mr. Speaker, sir, I know the truth, that's what I'm saying it. Unfortunately, you don't. You don't know the truth, Mr. Speaker, sir. Mr. Speaker, sir, the point with Honourable Prasad is this, and I'll get to your obsequiousness. The point of him is this, that he is so busy, first of all, trying to be so obsequious to the opposition, that means smarmy, if you know the meaning of that. Mr. Speaker, sir. So eager to roll over and please. So eager. Mr. Speaker, sir. I was this morning, around about 3 a.m. 3 a.m. I was trying to actually put together my notes and say, what am I going to say? And I realized all the contradictions that kept on coming from the opposition. It kind of reminded me, I have a young son who's actually into rapping, and I used to do a lot of poems before, and I came up with a poem for you, Honorable Prasad, and it goes like this. He will obfuscate, he will procrastinate, with no values or principles. Truth he will swindle, lest his ego dwindle. That's for you. That's for you, Honorable Prasad, because your ego gets in the way. And I find it quite actually an affront. I find it an affront that even the two members behind him from his party, they claim there's a legendary party, Honorable Tikon Duandua, who I've been extremely restrained with. Extremely restrained with because I treated him as a friend. I still thought of him as a friend. Obviously, he does not with me. Mr. Speaker, sir. Mr. Speaker, sir. He produced an email that I had sent the Honorable Prime Minister, and I have got other emails to that. He did not have the courtesy, nor will I understand Honorable John Yusamate talked about it, did not have the courtesy of reading the rest of the email. I know they put it on their webpage. There is no conspiracy. In fact, there's an email that says that if you use those base figures, we would have shown a growth in 2008 when the whole world knew that we did not grow in 2008. Honorable Prasad, understand that. In 2008, if we had used those figures, we would not have grown. This is the level of honesty that is there. They're now trying to, Mr. Speaker, sir, obfuscate issue. The reason why you're yelling is because you've been caught out. You're an intellectually dishonest politician. Intellectually dishonest politician. Mr. Speaker, sir. Mr. Speaker, sir. I have read the whole thing. You have not read it. Mr. Speaker, sir. The point of the matter is this, that we have a opposition since the pronouncement of the budget, I think, who went into a big spin because of the enormous changes that were actually put out. And they did not know how to handle it. This is why the quality and the level of contribution has been so abysmal over the past few days. Honorable Prasad has tried to spin the numbers. Honorable Rambuka has tried to, again, spin the numbers, pick and choose as he likes, tried to undermine institutions. And here we are, we have international monetary agencies believing in our economic growth, believing in our economic strength and economic management of our finances, and are willing to give us loans, as we highlighted, at concessionary rates, at 0%, at 1.5%. Mr. Speaker, sir, you see, this is the problem with him. Mr. Speaker, sir, if they did not have capacity, if they did not believe he had capacity, they would not have done so. He just stands and yells things. That's the problem. He doesn't want to actually dig up the truth. With that, we have in fact more money being lent to us, but we have said no. Of course, the fact of the matter is your debt to GDP ratio will go up because your GDP has come down. Anybody knows that. If your tourism numbers goes down, your GDP output will go down. Obviously, therefore, your debt to GDP ratio will go up. If your tourism numbers fall, you don't have revenue. Therefore, you don't have much operating revenue to work from. This is like teaching basic economics. And we have to stand here, we have to stand here and teach these people. You see, this is the problem, Mr. Speaker, and I've said this in Parliament before. This is, when Honorable Prasad actually tends to interject so much, he's caught out. And as I've said previously, the more he yells, the more soft ground he is on. Mr. Speaker, sir, the reality of the matter is this. We have said we need to make a mind shift change. We have said the entire philosophy of this budget is that we need to prepare ourselves when the borders open. We cannot react to situations. We need to be proactive. We need to be proactive. We can't be caught with our pants down. Honorable Prasad, we can't be caught with our pants down. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, sir, if you look, Mr. Speaker, sir, if you look at all the measures that have been announced in respect of, firstly, unemployment benefits of $100 million, in respect of the increase for social welfare, in respect of the police, the law and order situation, in respect of the increase for agriculture, in respect of the capacity building within the Ministry of Health, all of these are not simply just reacting, but pre-positioning ourselves. Number one. Number two, Mr. Speaker, sir, we have now put in place we've been given the opportunity, I should say, to be able to start off with a clean slate. So we have looked at the entire tariff system, 1,600 line items. Again, they're saying it's white goods. Again, Mr. Speaker, sir, that's an obfuscation. I've got a list of all the things here that we've zero rated or reduced. They're saying it's only for white goods. Fruits, vegetables, pasta, potatoes, dried condiments, soup broth, salmon, sardines, washing detergent, toothbrush, blankets, linen, exercise books, liquid soap, combs, baby walkers, lens and specs have been zero rated completely, Mr. Speaker, sir. Life jackets, Mr. Speaker, sir. And in fact, if you look at the revised, we have been working, as we announced, we've been working with all our counterparts, including the private sector. Things like undergarments, panties, hose, men's vest, children's vest, zero rated, Mr. Speaker, sir. All of these things we've been working on in the past few days. Is he telling me, are you telling me, you don't need underpants? You don't need the other goods? You don't need washing detergent? You don't need toothpaste? You don't need toothbrush? This is the kind of obfuscation that is taking place. He's sitting there gleefully, gleaming to himself. This is the shameful act, Mr. Speaker, sir. And I take exception to that. And I take exception to that. In the same way, on the same way, Mr. Speaker, sir. In the same way, Mr. Speaker, sir. Mr. Speaker, sir, in the same way, the global bonds, everybody knows the global bonds mature this year. He knows that too. Mr. Speaker, sir, the funds are already secured. We've inherited debts from SDL, from SVT, the NBF. He knows that, you see, because he's been obsequious. You've been obsequious because you need to be obsequious to him. That's his problem. That's your problem, Mr. Speaker, sir. Mr. Speaker, sir, the fact of the matter is that we have the global bond repayment this year. That's what he knows. Jugging up figures, saying $100 million. As I said to the Fiji Chamber of Commerce gathering on Saturday, here we are, Mr. Speaker, sir, going out to the outside world, trying to put our best foot forward. They are recognizing what we are saying, and they recognize what we have done. Yet, these people, for political gain, want to portray Fiji in a bad light. That's what they want to do. They want our ratings to come down. They want our ratings to go. See, look at him, what he said. Not just Fiji, just you. What an idiotic thing to say. You see, this, and thank you very much for that, actually. Thank you very much. That, Mr. Speaker, sir, encapsulates the entire thinking of this opposition, including you. Entire thinking of this opposition. It's personalized. Everything is personalized, Mr. Speaker, sir.
Order.
Mr. Speaker, sir, the fact of the matter is that we have many countries, Mr. Speaker, sir, that have taken these measures. And we are in a very good position to be able to take these measures. We have been told the ease of doing business in Fiji is pretty bad. With all this bureaucracy. We've now removed the business licenses. Stamp duties are gone. I don't know how many of them actually spoke about that. How many of them actually mentioned that? How many of them actually mentioned the fact that now tariff rates are basically flat 5% across? It will reduce corruption. It will reduce efficiency. How many of them talked about now, rather than trying to monitor that, we can now look at the standard of goods coming in? They did not talk about that. How many of them talked about the fact that ordinary Fijians can now get $30,000 housing grant? We've had so many queries. Honorable Premila Kumar will also tell you that, Minister for Housing. They did not mention that at all. They did not mention about the fact that how we're trying to pre-position private sector investment so it can create jobs. They did not mention any of that. And they have the gall, the audacity to come and say here that they're trying to do this for Fiji. They're trying to tell us facts. What a lot of baloney. What a lot of baloney, Mr. Speaker, sir. Mr. Speaker, sir, the fact of the matter is this. We have a number of measures that we put in place. We have a number of pre-positioning policies that have been put in place. We have also, Mr. Speaker, sir, tried to engender within the economy, Mr. Speaker, sir, a taxation regime that has reduced significantly many of the taxes. So we looked at, for example, ECAL. Nobody looked at the rationale for that. We've reduced it from 10% to 5%. We still need ECAL. We have over 40 villages to relocate to higher ground. We need the funding for that. We need renewable energy. We need to have roads that need to be addressed because they've been washed away by encroaching waters, inundation of waters, because of rising sea levels. We'll remove STT, Mr. Speaker, sir. All of these benefits have been put in place because they are long-term strategic thinking, Mr. Speaker, sir. We've slashed departure tax by $100. We have, Mr. Speaker, sir, said we're allocating $60 million to Fiji Airways so they can come up with packages. I just spoke to Fiji Airways last night. Already over 140 hotels and properties have decided to work with Fiji Airways to come up with this package. When we are told that when we tell that we need to have inclusive rates included, they're saying, oh, you don't have the right attitude. There are newspapers, they all talk about it. But Mr. Speaker, sir, we need to change the ball game. People know that. I understand somebody said, oh, we've only given money to tourism. Mr. Speaker said, no. But the person, I think Honorable Bulitavu may have said that, I'm not sure. Does he know how many people along the Coral Coast, in the Mamanudas, the Yasawas, Vanuatu, are directly engaged and work in the tourism sector? How many people are going to perform meke, people who sing in the bands, that they're engaged in the tourism sector? Did they talk about the 150% rebate that we said? Anybody who hires a meke group, a band, etc., you hire them, you get 150% tax deduction? They did not mention that. They did not mention that. We are talking about real people. These are real people. Mr. Speaker, sir, yet they failed to mention that. Yet they failed to highlight that. Yet they're trying to obscure and say only giving money to tourism. Tourism contributes 40% towards our GDP. Mr. Speaker, sir. So the fact of the matter is, Mr. Speaker, sir, we have half-baked approaches from the opposition in respect of this. Mr. Speaker, sir, I just wanted to very quickly once again highlight the increases that we have in the budget. We have budget increase from $347.5 million to $394 million, increase of $46 million for health. We are hiring additional 223 intern nurses, will become full-time nurses, 40 midwives, promoting 105 medical interns to full-time medical officers, CWM Maternity Hospital, Lambasa upgrade, $3 million, the hospital, increase $4 million for purchase of biomedical equipment, $25 million COVID-19 contingency fund, the police, increase of budget, Mr. Speaker, sir, to $200 million, up by $37.3 million. Phase 2 reform and restructure completion includes the regularization of special constables, recruitment of 30 civilians, filling of 394 vacant positions, including 257 promotions, 137 new recruits, completion of the police stations in Nakasi, Nandi, Lotoka, Nalawa, police stations, education, free education. I think somebody from the other side tried to obscure the, give wrong figures. Free education still continues. Yet they say we're not doing anything for the poor. We have now electricity bills being paid up to 31st of March of next year for those who earn less than $30,000. Extension of water disconnection policy in place. 31st of March this year, next year. And they say we don't do anything for the poor people. We don't do anything for the ordinary people. The suspension of TELS loans. So those people who are on TELS loans, they don't have to do the repayments if they continue to work. Mr. Speaker, sir, social welfare, an increase of $14.4 million. We have got DFAT now working with our social welfare to put in place an IT system to make sure that our social welfare recipients are paid on time, that we've got proper data, etc. Construction of the Barefoot College, Mr. Speaker, sir. Unemployment benefit, as I highlighted, $100 million, of which $5 million, Mr. Speaker, sir, is going towards reskilling, retraining people. Many people will change their jobs. All of these things are there for the ordinary Fijians. Mr. Speaker, sir, communications. Again, online business and construction licensing, they'll take place. Should be completed in the next 9 months or so. All of this is pre-positioning Fiji, Mr. Speaker, sir. All of this is pre-positioning our economy. All of this also at the same time, Mr. Speaker, sir, is all looking after ordinary Fijians. So, Mr. Speaker, sir, the fact of the matter is, you know, last Thursday, we had, on Wednesday, I had rung up the Secretary General of Parliament saying that we'd like to offer a budget session to the opposition. And we got a message the next day saying that 5 of them will turn up. And we had said 1 o'clock. We'll wait until 20 to 2, or 10 to 2 actually. And then we were told, initially we were told they're coming, they're on their way, and by 10 to 2 they were told that they're not coming anymore. Mr. Speaker, sir, I mean, look, that's a prerogative. Honourable Lenora Gerengeri-Tumbu, who I understand is now the timekeeper of everybody, you should make a note of that, who turned up late and who didn't. Mr. Speaker, sir, but what really actually caught my attention was the civil servants who were there, they actually could not believe it. They were all geared up. These people had been awake for many nights. They were there to talk about the budget. They had people from FRCS, we had people from Ministry of Economy waiting. There's about 15 of them. And when I told them the opposition is coming, they waited for 40 minutes or 50 minutes. And the opposition is not coming, and they had this look of, you know, disgust on their face. That here they are working hard and these people decide not to turn up. Mr. Speaker, sir, this is the kind of message, that they're sending. In the same way, Mr. Speaker, sir, Mr. Speaker, sir, in the same way, you know, just to show the caliber of reporting I wanted to highlight of Fiji Times, I got a set of questions yesterday, not about budget issues, but saying, Honourable Gerengeri-Tumbu has said that you came late for budget. Can you comment on that? This is the level of questions that we get sent by the good old Fiji Times, Mr. Speaker, sir. Last point I want to make, Mr. Speaker, sir. All of these things we are doing is trying to pre-position Fiji. The Honourable Prime Minister launched the Care Fiji app a few weeks back. The Care Fiji app, Mr. Speaker, sir, was given to us by Singapore. It's the same source code that Australia uses. About a week and a half ago, in the 7:30 report, the Australian Prime Minister Scott Morrison, in a very proud manner, stated that 40% of Australians have that app on their phones. And the reason why he said that in a proud manner was because it's one of the highest rates of uploads of that app. But it goes to show that the contact tracing abilities through digital means is one of the better ways of doing contact tracing. I bet you none of the opposition actually have the contact tracing app on, Care Fiji app on. Mr. Speaker, sir, the reality of the matter is this. The reason, let me reiterate this, and you have their favorite law firm, one of their lawyers, writing an opinion piece in the Fiji Times saying, oh, because there's no privacy laws in Fiji, etc., we should not have the Care Fiji Act. You give more information to Google, WhatsApp, Viber, and every other single app than you'll ever give with this particular app. All it simply does, Mr. Speaker, sir, this is a concerted political effort to undermine an effort to get people to come to Fiji. When an Australian or a Kiwi, let me just explain. When an Australian, you don't know what you're talking about, please keep quiet. When an Australian or a Kiwi looks at the Bulla bubble,
it is true. Order.
When an Australian, when an Australian or a Kiwi or any other traveller now in the world, when they actually look at whether to travel to a country or not, they look at your health capacity now. If we get a vaccine, of course, that's a different story. They look at whether everybody in Fiji is vaccinated or not. They look at your health capacity. One of the critical issues in the COVID-19 pandemic is your ability to contact trace. Is your ability to contact trace. So if, for example, you are in a room full of people for more than 15 minutes, 2 days later, assuming, I get COVID-19, they will ask me, who were you in the room with for the past few days? So we can immediately get in touch with them, so we can tell them, please come in, we can check you for your symptoms. That's how you stop community spread. Nobody in the human capacity can remember every single person they met. All the contact tracing does is that the phone is here. My Bluetooth at the moment is bouncing off the PM's Bluetooth. All it does is records his number. That's all. It does not say where we met. It does not say we were holding hands or not. It does not say we were in the hotel room under a mango tree or wherever. All it does. You see, this is the kind of cynicism saying, you sure? This is the kind of cynicism when Google, when Apple Store have all approved this. Yet they're saying that. For me, this is a direct affront to the people of Fiji. It's a direct affront to the tourism workers in Fiji. Here we are trying to hard, so then people have confidence. They say, yes, okay, Fiji's got contact tracing app. If I do go there, if there is a community outbreak, they can get in touch with me really quickly. People watch your numbers. At the moment, our upload is only about 50,000. It's very low. We need it to increase. If we go out into the market, if you want to fill up the hotels in Tavyuni, if you want to fill up the hotels in Savu Savu, people will say, has Fiji got a contact tracing app or not? University studies have proven. University studies have proven digital contact tracing is the best way to do it. And once you get the number, it rolls off. Every 28 days it falls off. It's only for the past 28 days. And Mr. Speaker, sir, it's only for the past 28 days. If, assuming that I get COVID-19, if I get COVID-19, then they will send me a PIN number. I have to agree to give my numbers. It will go simply to the Ministry of Health dashboard. There's a group of people there. All they'll get is the numbers. No name. Where you met them. Where you holding their hands or kissing them. They won't know. They'll simply tell you what the number was. They'll call that number and say, excuse me, you have been in contact with somebody who's just had COVID-19. Can you please come in and get yourself checked out? When an Australian tourist or New Zealand tourist is looking at that, they'll say this place is a safe place to go. That's all there is to it. Yet, they are undermining it. They and their supporters are undermining it. Those savvy people, supposedly savvy on social media. Mr. Speaker, sir, this is the level of contribution by the opposition. Mr. Speaker, sir, I just want to make a few just very broad-based statements. The fact of the matter is, I just would have wished, and I wish, Honourable Rambuka, you had actually stuck to your words, your first reaction. Even your new Vice President rang me up the next day, on the 18th of July, maybe this is before he became VP, it was before he became VP, from Ra. He said, very good budget. Very good budget. Please don't remove him. But he said very good budget. Mr. Speaker, sir, if Honourable Rambuka actually had stuck to his words, would have been having a completely different approach. The Fijian people would have actually understood that this parliament actually wants this country to move along. We need to get people back into their jobs. We need to get the tourists back in. We need the government factories to work. We need the businesses to, do their business. We need the private sector to invest. They did not talk about the fact of giving all these incentives to the private sector, do subdivision of lots, get various tax exemptions. These are huge. Let me tell you. You are burying your heads in sand. There's a huge private sector positive reaction to this budget. Huge. Huge. And in fact, in the next few weeks, we'll be commissioning a number of new projects. That's the reality. Would have been wonderful if the opposition actually took that line. You could have done your political point scoring later. You could have done your point scoring later. You have not even mentioned the stamp duty removal, a bane of our lives for years. Nobody mentioned that. And Honorable Prasad and all these people talk about being honest. Where's the honesty in this? Like I said, Mr. Speaker, sir, Mr. Speaker, sir, and I think, this actually applies to many people. Even the sugarcane guaranteed price. They went on about that. They ran the article without even checking with us. Anybody who knows about the sugarcane industry knows the sugarcane payments are made over 4 payments. The 4th payment is in the wash-up, which falls into the next financial year. Mr. Speaker, sir, I talk about the budget for that financial year. That's the level of transparency we have for this financial year. For the 3 payments, it will be $70, and obviously the 4th payment will be the wash-up. How simple is that? How simple is that, Mr. Speaker, sir? You see, Mr. Speaker, sir, he rubbed his hands in glee. Oh, now I can go and get the sugarcane farmer vote. That's what it was. And suddenly, the rug has been pulled from underneath his feet. Mr. Speaker, sir. So, Mr. Speaker, sir. Mr. Speaker, sir. I would stop addressing Honorable Prasad. And Mr. Speaker, sir, I just wanted to say to the Fijian people that this budget, under the leadership of a Prime Minister, is a way forward to get us out of this pandemic situation. Mr. Speaker, sir, nobody knows, except God, what is going to happen with this pandemic next week. Nobody knows whether we're going to get a 4th phase, 5th phase, or whether somebody will come up with a vaccine in 3 weeks' time. Nobody knows. Until such time, we have to put our best foot forward. Until such time, we cannot be sitting around twiddling our thumbs, making all sorts of comments and assertions, and doomsday speak, 666 and all of that, Mr. Speaker, sir, and not be proactive. We have to, Mr. Speaker. So I understand somebody also brought the Golingoli bill. Mr. Speaker, sir, what a lot of nonsense. In this situation, when we're trying to spur up investment, when we're trying to actually drive confidence, bringing in all this disruptive type of policies, Honorable Prasad, of course, obsequious again, won't say anything about it. Because you've got this culture of being obsequious. Mr. Speaker, sir. Mr. Speaker, sir. Mr. Speaker, sir. The reality of the matter is this. Mr. Speaker, sir, the reality of the matter is this. That we have put a best way forward. We are being proactive. We are going to look after those people who need assistance, unemployment benefits. We are going to look after people on social welfare. We are going to look after people who need health services. We are going to look after law and order. We are going to provide impetus for the agriculture sector. And Mr. Speaker, sir, at the same time, we're going to try and boost investment through a private sector by developing relationships with the private sector, providing an open, transparent system, by removing the tariff hurdles, by putting in place various tax incentives, and also at the same time, Mr. Speaker, sir, empower ordinary Fijians further by giving them new forms of assistance, for example, like housing grants. For example, like giving them access to other types of services and amenities, making it easier for them to do business, no more business license. That's what we have done, Mr. Speaker, sir. And the feedback that we have got is that we are on a good track. And we must be focused. We need to be positive. And I urge the Fijian people not to listen to the opposition. Don't believe the analysis by Fiji Times. This is just a smear propaganda campaign. But, Mr. Speaker, sir, focus on the ground realities. That is what we need people to understand. And, Mr. Speaker, sir, the fact of the matter is that we have now a budget to debate to the Working Committee. If you look at, Mr. Speaker, sir, all the figures that we put in place, these figures have been thought out very well, been thought out very hard. We've been frugal as much as possible, but we've also been strategic in respect of where we carry out our investments. I'd like to once again, Mr. Speaker, sir, thank numerous people who actually helped us, both from the private sector, people in the Ministry of Economy, people in FRCS. Well, one person specifically I want to mention, because the tariff reduction was a huge and massive exercise which is still being carried out. Shalini Kumar from FRCS, the 1,600 line items, they've been reduced. Till last night they were working. The young people, the young civil servants, the economists, etc., they're very excited about this budget. The feedback, they're saying this is really good. You're on a good path. And they have only chagrin for all of you, those of you who have been critical of it. I want to thank the Honourable Prime Minister for his ability to understand the vision, for his ability to drive that vision, for his ability to think outside the box, Honourable Pio Tikonduandua. Honourable Pio Tikonduandua. You can die 1,000 deaths for a leader like him than to follow for 1 minute the kind of treacherous politics that you profess. You can die 1,000 deaths for a leader like him than for the treacherous politics that you profess. Even for 1 minute, I will not ever join you. Mr. Speaker, sir, the fact of the matter is this, that we are now on a path of recovery. And we pray to God that we get this COVID-19 behind us. We'll be able to pre-position ourselves well. Let's be positive. Let's help each other. Get rid of the negativity. Of course there'll be challenges. Of course there could be another third, fourth wave. But if we are positive, if we unite as a nation, and speak as a nation, think as a nation, not be divided along all the lines that you're talking about, then we'll be in a much better position than we are, Mr. Speaker, sir. Mr. Speaker, sir, with those comments, I'd like to now conclude my right of reply. Thank you.